Okay, we are live. We're just gonna wait a little bit to see if there is a populace of people out there. I'm just
I should say that I've archived, and I will archive this onto my website. As well. And it's actually it gets quite decent. What's the word? Traffic. So
it's traffic. We should play charades.
look, I said I'm caffeinated and I'm ready to go, but it's still early.
How is your book going?
The TBL book, that's all 100% done. Like
Oh,
it's just in production. It comes out on October the 5th. So yes, if anyone happens to be here, I don't have YouTube open, so I don't know, but I'm assuming not many. It is available for pre-order, as I've been spruiking. No, I'm moving on to my next book.
already?
Yes. Welcome to academia. It's called Publish or
Publish or
Perish.
Perish, yeah.
If you don't just keep going, then you get left behind, and then you don't get money. But yeah, no, this is something I've been working on for a while. I've been looking at fandom for Japanese and Korean media in the Philippines for several years now, almost 5-6 years. So I have a book project about that I'm going to write up, as well as starting my new project looking at feminist activist potentials of male idol fandom in Japan. But that one's, I'm just starting it, so that's quite a long ways away. Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't sound like you're perishing.
It's because I've had it instilled in me that you need to just keep on working. But to be honest, scholarship has a natural, I don't know what the word is, like it just kind of naturally follows on. Like whilst you're looking at one thing, you develop a curiosity to something else that might be tangential, and then they just kind of feed into each other. And this work on the Philippines, like it started because I was looking at Thai BL fandom in the Philippines, and that naturally spiraled out to look at other things. So, and of course, in my book, there's like a chapter where a third of that chapter half of the chapter looks at Filipino fans of Thai BL, but there was so much that I couldn't fit in there that's now like, well, there's a book. So that's how it works. So that will take a while to write as well.
And then you're going to Japan for research.
Yes, on November the 1st is when I land in Tokyo after a brief stint in the United States. I'm going to Buffalo, of all places.
Why Buffalo?
Because I've been invited to give a keynote at a conference there on the reception of K-pop in the West. And I'm to be fair, I'm in Chicago first for family stuff, and then a friend of mine who works at University of Buffalo found out that I was going to be there, invited me across. So yeah, I mean, I've never seen Niagara Falls, so hooray.
So K-pop in the West, like the country West, like how?
I mean, West broadly defined. It's actually, to be quite frank, and I'll say this because I know that she's not listening. It's not a term that I would ever use in my scholarship. I just don't.
Right.
Yeah, but it's the theme of the conference. So I'm specifically going to be talking about the Australian context that I've been researching, with a few segues to other places because I'm me.
Okay. Let's get started on this discussion. We are here to talk with Dr. Thomas Baudinette about openly LGBTQ actors, idols, mostly wanted to get into the Thai BL industry, on the history and the circumstances, and also the I don't know if it's the repercussions, but the extrapolations of what's happened to the queer individuals that have declared their queerness. I don't know how to say things, but like I think because this came up to me because we talked so much about how detrimental it potentially can be for certain actors to come out in Thailand, and the conservative powers that be are like, no gays in my BLs, or I'm not sure what the attitude is, but
It's not so much no gays in my BLs. The way I would frame it is that their concern is we can't market this because BL is for women if you're gay, and like that's something that I've always argued, is a very limiting perspective. But if that's the perspective that I like, this idea of the powers that be, the shadowy old men who sit around a table, the board of directors of a company, making decisions based purely in very conservative understandings of like, profitability and so forth. These are the people who don't want gays in their BL, despite the fact that I think the majority of fans would be more than happy for there to be gays, lesbians, bis, whatever in their BL. So yeah, but yeah, this is the context. But there are, of course, people who have chosen to openly come out, even within this broader come out. Sorry, I'm trying not to use this term. It just comes naturally to me because I work in an English speaking country. But like people who are out with their queerness in whatever form that may take. There are several who've chosen to do that. Some because it was a political choice, others because it was just because they chose to do so. Never hid it, I guess, is one way to put it.
It's so fascinating to think that a fake queer relationship would be more profitable than a real queer relationship, because everyone's trying to find out if they're real, but it's the mystery, it's the game.
I think the mystery of it is part of what drives the fandom. And I've said to you guys a number of times when we've chatted that yes, I know certain like couples that are quote unquote real, whatever that may mean, and I won't disclose who they are because that information was shared with me in confidence, right? But trying to sit down and determine the authenticity of the performance can be both quite a lot of fun for fans, but as we've seen in recent years, it can also lead to very kind of antisocial behavior amongst fans as well. So I think that's one of the things that we need to kind of put a caveat on, that if we are going to be talking about idols, actors, what have you, who choose to be openly identifying with their queerness or whatever, or subtly nodding towards their queerness in certain individuals' instances, that it's not about trying to argue and hence they're more authentic or something. It's just the nature of the game. I like that idea of the game. Yeah.
Is there like a chronological way we can talk about certain individuals or like an impact or like?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think it's difficult because there are people who've been active in the industry for a very long time who then only chose to reveal their queerness later in the game, right? So I think rather than trying to determine some kind of mythic first individual to come out from whom everyone follows, one of the problems that we have, for instance, when we reflect on this within the context of the history of, for example, North American media, there's often this kind of heavy mythologization, for example, of the choice of Ellen DeGeneres to come out on her sitcom, right? And then that was supposed to represent, then everyone else felt comfortable to do so, which neglects the fact that there were plenty of people who are out and proud, or kind of signaled towards it in various different ways within their public lives or their professional lives in North America. So I think it's not a productive way to think about it, to try and find this one person who came first and then everyone else comes after, because that can often occlude more subtle forms of performance of queerness within public life that predate these sorts of declarative acts. And within the history of Thai media culture, where gender and sexuality is understood in very different ways to the West, for instance, there have been people who have been outwardly what we would call gay, queer, lesbian, bisexual, etc., or trans, most significantly, that would never have used those categories to make sense of themselves at the time. But they were, oh god, I just knocked my thing over. But
I'm passionate, Thomas. Oh my god.
My problem, I always wave my hands around. Also, as I was saying to you guys, just because I've had my coffee doesn't mean that I'm fully together. But yeah, so this is something to also think about. So I guess that's a long academic rambling answer to maybe we just throw some names around.
Well,
DC has a question.
I just want to also, it's always an ahistorical look at Ellen coming out because she came out. Then her show was canceled because her character came out.
Yeah.
And people forget that there is a high cost to being the first of few. And
I think
so,
definitely.
and so just
Sorry.
being, and yes, there were other people who came out before Ellen and all this other kind of stuff, but they weren't as visible. But there was a reason for that. And Ellen didn't even stay visible for that long amount of time after. It's like, oh yeah, you're out. We're canceling your show. We're just it.
Yes. It reminds me of there was an actor and variety show comedian in South Korea named Hong Suk-chun who came out in 2000 and was immediately blacklisted and has really only had his career resuscitated in the final few years. This is also the time when the M to F transgender star Harisu was also active and was able to transition into a successful mainstream career because of their adoption of various legal kind of protections that were emerging in South Korea around that time in the early 2000s. But they both faced terrible costs in their careers, and most importantly, with regard to Harisu, in their personal lives. And yeah, this is it's important, to I don't want to mythologize these people, but at the same time, you're quite right, DC, that we kind of celebrate these coming out moments without then historicizing them as the incredibly dangerous moments they were. And I think that we're quite lucky if we're going to talk about openly LGBTQ plus BL actors and idols in Thailand, as well as in certain other contexts. We can be quite happy to know that sort of thing hasn't necessarily happened. It hasn't led to blacklisting per se, though, as I'm sure we'll get into, it isn't necessarily those who are most openly political about their positions that have had the best career opportunities so far. And there's a variety of reasons for that.
Let's start with the Wabi Sabi crew, because I remember people saying that Wabi Sabi had this no gays audition process, and then somehow they end up with some of the openly queer. So Earth and now I'm scared of saying
Fluke. Earth and Fluke would be the absolute most powerful. There's a word that I would say that I can't say that rhymes with runt. Couple in existence if they were allowed to pair together, but for some reason this just doesn't happen. So yes, let's talk about that moment. So yes, Earth, Wabi Sabi's Earth, and Fluke Natach, formerly working with Wabi Sabi but now an independent agent, are both openly gay, and that's the term they use. They're gay, and this is quite interesting because you're right in highlighting that during the casting process for the series that they debuted in Love by Chance, there were caveats placed on the casting of certain roles that they could not be openly queer men, and that caused a huge, quite rightful amount of anger amongst both international fans and domestic Thai fans. And it's important to recognize, Love by Chance played a really important role in mainstreaming Thai BL, but I think a lot of people who are into BL now may not either weren't there, so didn't know, or may have forgotten that Love by Chance actually almost didn't make it to air, partly because it was originally going to be broadcast on a public broadcaster, MCOT, the same company that broadcast Lovesick back in the day, the first official Thai BL series. And that's because a new board of directors was put into place at MCOT after the 2014 coup. and they nixed it because it was dangerous to public morals. So this is an example of those shadowy board of directors that we're talking about. And in the end, Love by Chance pivoted to be broadcast on, I think, GMM 25, which is a station owned by the broader GMM Grammy conglomerate, media conglomerate, but is separate to GMM TV, which is a separate cable station. And this is kind of speaks to the fact that that's why we can understand that there was that kind of rationale that the men who had to play in the roles had to be non-LGBT, because this board of directors was really worried about the blah, 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 the dangers to public morals. But of course, the great irony is that the director, New Siwat, openly gay, right? And has been quite active in the industry in directing not just Wabi Sabi's stuff, but also work for GMM TV as well as other production houses, and is one of those gay male directors involved in the industry. And I'm sure we'll talk about them a little bit more. We've talked about them in the past, but we'll mention them again, I'm sure, who have been quite active in pushing BL as a space for exploring political issues and so forth. But yes, despite this ban, they got 2 openly gay male idols who very quickly confirmed their queerness in various ways. Now, did they do so through promotional activities? No, they did so through their private social media channels. And I think that that's important to note with regards to these two. And that's just because of the history of the moment within which they were working.
So, like, at which point of the series? Like, after it aired, or like
after it aired? Yeah. So during the airing, it was carefully, I wouldn't say concealed. People knew. So this is the thing. People knew because, these idols didn't come from nowhere. They were already previously active on social media. Earth had appeared in something, indie, and Fluke famously was involved in a lot of gay indie cinema, along with other actors who have become very famous within the Thai BL industry. For instance, Gan Atapan, Chimon Wirawat, what's his name? Chimon Wachirawat? I can't remember. Chimon.
all the
Who
power to you
else?
for
Chanon, Non Kun. And they performed in these queer indie films, and then transitioned that into formal kind of roles in BL companies such as GMM TV. But yeah, so this particular historical moment is 2017, 18, 19. And it's really in 2019, early 2019, where the series had concluded. They'd become massively popular. They began to be a little bit, less subtle about hiding who they really were. But before that, they were social media stars, and people knew them through their performances in queer indie cinema, and they knew who they were, and they'd never hidden anything.
Oh, okay. And then how did their coming out? Like, did anything happen? Repercussions?
I mean, this is the thing. This is where it gets murky. If we're talking about like any kind of formal backlash, no, there was no real negative backlash. And this is partly because, the reception of Love by Chance, post this series, it was a very volatile time within the BL fandom culture in Thailand and internationally, partly because, and I'm not going to go into it because I don't want to spark fan wars, but there were a lot of tensions that existed between the management companies of various talents and the fans of particular couples, devolving into some of those antisocial behaviors that I was alluding to previously. Antisocial behaviors that still exist, and we can see them circulating amongst various companies, fandom cultures today, most notably Beyond Cloud and Idol Factory. And they're still there. And I don't think I think it's completely fine to acknowledge that those antisocial behaviors still exist, because there are delusional fans who don't know how to play the game, as you quite rightly put it, Edison. But it was really during Love by Chance time that we saw that come up. So that's what people remember, right? The messiness of the fandom culture as it was beginning to become more mainstream, people having to learn to navigate that and learn how shipping functioned in ways like they never encountered that kind of culture before, many of the people who got involved in it. But also huge disputes between management agencies. But interestingly, not necessarily related to Fluke or not necessarily related to Earth. What's interesting, though, is that Fluke did move very quickly to go freelance. And I don't want to speculate around why that decision was made, but that was the decision that was made. As did Titipat. So, yeah. Whereas Earth stuck with Wabi Sabi.
Did you say there was any like political reasons for them to do so, or
no? So this was around the same time. So this is around the time the transition from Love by Chance to Until We Meet Again was a really interesting moment, because of course all of these stars that I'm talking about didn't appear in Love by Chance. They were in Until We Meet Again, right? And like, because of this moment, like Wabi Sabi had this huge kind of mess with Love by Chance. There was these roles around, we can't hire non-LGBTQ stars, but hang on, we've already signed some for our next series, blah, blah, blah. It was just a messy moment that becomes very confused. And this was at a time, as I said, a time of transition when BL within Thailand was moving from being a kind of very niche phenomena, a profitable phenomenon, but a niche one, to one of the mainstream kind of ways in which Thai media culture was structured. So, yeah, I think maybe some of the confusion that I feel still talking about it is a good way to kind of speak about this moment metaphorically, because it was just messy. And in the messiness, these two young queer men emerged in between Love by Chance and Until We Meet Again. And yeah, they were out. I think I've heard rumors that Fluke Nuthatch in particular was potentially supposed to be in Love by Chance. I don't know if this is true, it's just a rumor. And that maybe his sexuality was considered to be a problem there. But Earth certainly wasn't. So, and indeed, Earth's open sexuality helped in the marketing of Until We Meet Again, because of the character he played and the political elements of that story. So, yeah, which is
political elements? Wasn't he just
yes,
like a crying little brother?
What no. So that's him in Love by Chance.
We're talking about Until We Meet Again.
Yeah, okay, I'm talking about Until We Meet Again. No, he's the political. No, there's no political elements in Love by Chance. Love by Chance's role in mainstreaming Thai BL was not a political one at all. In my book, I talk about its role in normalizing an important part of contemporary BL culture, which is NC scenes. Not politics. Yeah.
But then obviously in Until We Meet Again, it's the whole, okay, you can't come out in the past, now you can be free in the present.
And it was useful. And you'll note that you had two openly gay actors playing in those roles. And that, but by that point in time, they were known to be openly gay.
So why the dissonance in their scenario and then everyone else? Like, why were they able to be free? And is it because it was harder to hide, or like?
I think by that point in time, with what happened was now Wabi Sabi as a company had established itself, right? And was with New as an activist director who was himself gay, identified as such. I honestly think that after the experience that he had with Love by Chance, which was messy, I think he just kind of said, you know what, let's just go with it. And we need to think about this also as the moment in which 2019 was an important year in Thai BL, because this is also, you know, when we had Dark Blue Kiss come out, directed by Alf from GMM who is, you know, famous for his very, very firm stance that BL plays a political role in telling queer stories. It's also when Jojo Tichakon had first, I can't remember the name of the series, Bangkok.
Okay.
Bangkok. Okay, something
Okay,
Bangkok
Bangkok.
Stories. I can't remember what it's called. It was on Netflix at one point.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
is it one on Netflix?
Yeah, and also my favorite messy drama of his, before Only Friends came out, of course, is Friend Zone. That's the year of all of this, and so it was a like, they were out there making the kind of series that you didn't necessarily see on Thai television by that point in time, and they were very firmly doing so through their lens as gay director auteurs, and they were very active, particularly Dark Blue Kiss, taking the novel, the kind of novel series, the Kiss series novels by Hideko Sunshine, and going like, you know what, I'm gonna push this further than what it was. So, you know, that was the moment in 2019. Is that we saw, this is when the beginning of that kind of political consciousness began to emerge within Thai BL culture. Then we had what I would hypothesize as a slight reaction against that within 2020. If you think about some of the 2020 BL series, Together the series most famously, but also Tonhon Chonlati, you know, they were not necessarily particularly political. And then following that, we have A Tale of a Thousand Stars, and Not
But
Me.
they did have a baby in Tonhon Chonlati. I thought that was
yes,
pretty
they did. Yeah. And of course we had out gay characters, but Tonhon Chonlati is just a mess. Just gonna put it out there. Just a mess. They didn't really know what they were doing with that one.
I think for me it was like it was addressing what is it called? Filial duties.
Yes, and it was also addressing the idea of internalized homophobia. Like, yeah. I'll give it a slight benefit of the doubt. I just don't think it did it very well. And I say this with great love and respect for both Pod and Katung, who I like. But yeah. But like, and I'll say this with the full knowledge that people will come after me. Together, the series was reactionary. It was not a politically progressive text at all. Text. I'm not talking about the actors here, guys. Text. Just looking directly in the camera. Because it's not very progressive, really. Unfortunately. But that's okay. And then 2021, things picked up and it got political. And then 2022, by that point in time, it was very political, BL politicized by that point in time. Like, and that's because the fans, young people active in the Thai democracy movement, it needed to be political by that point in time. And yet still some actors can't come out.
Is there anyone we can move on to? So it felt like it was just a moment in time where those actors were able to.
Yeah, just
then it wasn't as harsh
because of where they were. I think because they were at Wabi Sabi, they were in that kind of in between messy moment between Love by Chance and Until We Meet Again. They were in this moment in 2019 where BL was developing in Thailand a political consciousness. So they were part and parcel of that broader transition.
But now the industry is so strong and the profits are acknowledged. Is it more like controlled now? Like they're more closely monitored?
If we're going to use the concept of like media kind of consumer theory, like the problem that we have now is oversupply. And that means that like, yeah, there's just so many people involved in the industry that it just becomes messy. But the thing is that within Thailand, as we've already spoken about, like, yes, Thai BL has developed political kind of perspectives, but only in certain contexts. GMM TV's series, many of them are political in many ways. Not all of them are. Hidden agenda, I'm looking at you. But like they're kind of, because they have that broader connection to these gay auteur activist directors, right? That's why GMMTV has this kind of tradition of including kind of political messaging in their BLs now. But like Wabi Sabi, like I loved Between Us, the series, because I love Boon Prem, right? I mean, anyone who's been on my Twitter will see my proudly pinned photo together with those two, right? But Boon Prem, Between Us, the series was not necessarily, do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't addressing political questions necessarily in the same way that some of these other shows have been. And then you look at all of the stuff coming out of smaller companies, you know. I don't want to suggest that BL needs to be overtly political, because there is the danger of it slipping into being overly preachy or being too pedagogical, trying to teach heavy-handedly. And that's not effective either. But yeah, some companies are notable for being political. GMMTV for some of their series, not all. Dumundi always engages with political questions nowadays. Wabi Sabi sometimes, but then you've got other companies that don't. And I'm not going to name them because I don't want to name and shame.
Let's do some questions quickly. Cal wants to ask, tell us everything. What the question is, what were the issues you found with Together this series? Or just tell us everything you hated about Together. Why not?
It's just as I said, it's a traditional. It's what we would call a classic BL narrative, in the sense that it adheres perfectly to the classical tropes that emerged in the 1970s in Japan, within which particular kinds of character identities are structured, and they're grounded in a world of fantasy in which, you know, love is often expressed as a kind of spiritual connection between individuals rather than connected to a broader politics. What's interesting is, of course, that when Alf got his hands on the text and made Still Together, he very firmly injected the political element that Together the series was lacking. And I think that that's important to acknowledge. So I want to flag here that I'm talking about BL, like Together the series, as a text. Like if we're looking at its narrative, we're looking at its characterizations. If we look at it within the context of its reception, then yes, it played an important queer potential, in the sense that it was the first BL series that many people encountered, particularly outside of Thailand, that helped to demonstrate the economic potentials of the genre, and also that helped people who had never seen themselves represented on the screen see themselves for the first time. That's a difference, however, within the context of reception versus what was within the text itself. And this is important because texts which are reactionary can still be utilized in politically radical ways. And that's something I just want to flag with regards to Together the series. So I think that Together the series' power was not within the text itself, but within the moment it was produced and in the culture of reception that circulated around it. Because, yes, so I just want to flag here that everything I'm talking about here is about the inherent narratives of the series rather than their reception cultures right now. So, for instance, this is another one that I've upset the Brightwind fans. Now I'm going to upset the ZNU fans. So when I was thinking about preachy BL, like the final episode of Cutie Pie is preachy and pedagogical and not at all subtle, right? So within the context of the text, that is like, but as a political statement within a heteronormative, extraordinarily conservative culture, such as Thailand, but also at the simmering moment in which there was debates over legalization of same-sex marriage and a rising political consciousness born out of a youth-led protest movement. Yeah, Cutie Pie's final scene with the terrible photoshopped signs was a bit on the nose, but it was incredibly significant as an activist act from a mainstream kind of production system, BL, that had up until that moment in time gained a reputation for not being politically engaged. So you can see how I can critique the logic of the scene and then celebrate. Like Z Nunu are important voices within LGBTQ rights in Thailand. Some people would even go so far as to suggest that they are out. I'm not going to say anything about that because reasons, but they are very significant. But you'll notice that other stars haven't necessarily done that, even though their series have been incredibly influential. I'm not naming names.
Back to Together, I was going to make, I'm sure a lot of people could see themselves in these characters. Like, I was trying to make a joke there, but that didn't land.
Oh, God.
Why? All I remember from Together is like this bouquet of condoms. And then I'm like, are they effing? Because they don't have any intimacy. But let's move on to the next
so angry
question.
by that scene. Wasn't it also Tan Type that had the birthday present with condoms?
I did not watch Tan Type.
Oh my God,
Well, actually, there we go. Out openly LGBTQ idol. Is this known?
I thought he was outed and was not out, and the controversy was swept under the rug. I'm not sure.
So maybe we can't talk about. Yeah, okay.
But is it open or is it like?
I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's as you were saying before we started recording. It's a glass closet in case.
It's not a secret to the people who want to know.
Yeah. Oh, we're talking about Muse Superset, guys. Like I think we can name the names with this guy because you're quite right. Because of the outing, and then there was also Art Pakpum, who was involved in that scandal. And that was recently, as I'm sure some people were well aware, recently kind of finally worked through, apparently. Mediated is maybe the best word. Yeah.
But yeah, has anything happened since then in terms of, I haven't seen him in any roles.
So if you're in Bangkok, you'll see Muse Superset around. He's transitioned more into a production role. He does have an upcoming BL drama that is set in South Korea, one of these new Thai-South Korea kind of collaborations. But Muse Superset transitioned very much to the production side of things after Tan Type and its sequel. You know, that made sense for him. I mean, I just sit there thinking that Muse Superset and the other guy that I often think about is Up Poompat. You know, they're doing their PhDs. I've done a PhD. And I'm sitting there going, you're doing a PhD and you're doing all of this. Do you sleep? The answer is they probably don't. So, yeah, I can see why Mew has stepped behind the camera. And he in many instances, these people go freelance. And I think that there's a variety of different reasons that they go freelance, but ultimately freelancing is about freedom, right? And it means that they can pursue what they want to do. And Muse Superset is very clearly interested in producing, more interested in his music, I think, more interested in spending holidays with Tun Pakon over in New York. So that's what he's going to be doing. Yeah.
We have a question from Color Me Crystal 27 about if the role of international fans has played a role.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Politics.
And I don't want to, I don't want to suggest that it's because international fans have come in and corrected Thai fans who are somehow, politically naive or behind. But the fact of the matter is that Thai BL now operates within a global system. We're beginning to see actually certain series. If you pay attention to some of the Twitter trending information that certain companies make to kind of celebrate their recent episode release, some of you may have noticed, if you're savvy, that certain series are actually resonating more with international audiences than they are with Thai audiences, and certain other series are more popular in Thailand. Then if you look at it, like kind of the kind of dispersion of where these trends are coming, there are some series that are resonating more outside the traditional East and Southeast Asian consumer base of Thailand, Thai BL, and resonating more globally than others. So this is important. Like they're being produced by certain companies in particular. They're being produced with a very globalized image. The classic example, and I'm sure people get sick of me harping on about this particular company, is GMMTV, because GMMTV has a global mindset. Yes, they're not necessarily the best when it comes to artist management, but when it comes to being a company that produces media content, they know what they're doing. Or more importantly, GMMTV as a subsidiary of Grammy, GMM Grammy knows what they're doing in terms of global promotion. So international reception plays a role within this broader shift. And one of the things that's significant about, for instance, Love by Chance, and then 2019, just after Love by Chance, was that this was the moment when we saw international fandom begin to develop in a big way. A lot of people historicize it quite rightly to the boom in Together the series in 2020 when it became a hugely international phenomena. But actually the seeds of that were very firmly being kind of sown by 2019. And I always point out to people that I discovered Thai BL and Lovesick and other BL adjacent series such as Hormones back in 2014 because of randomly finding it on a fan page on Facebook run by Filipinos, right? So it was already international by that point in time. Right?
We have a question from Marie Schmidt about an example or two about series that are more popular by Thai people, or I guess by Thai audience. I'm curious to know what series are more popular international that don't make it as big in Thailand. Do you have examples of that?
We talked about this in our very first conversation, Edison. I think or maybe it was in our 2022 roundup.
Yeah,
we know the what is it called?
And I was talking about, like, did maybe the people listening in, I don't know how many of you watched Ai Long Nai and enjoyed Ai Long Nai. Mean Ping, the couple from that series, are hugely popular in Thailand right now. Massively popular in Thailand. Not at all popular amongst certain international fandom cultures. Likewise, I think a good example, my beloved series, Vice Versa, the series, developed a little bit more popularity outside Thailand than inside Thailand. So there's two examples. Right now, Hidden Agenda is very popular in Thailand. Very popular in Thailand. I don't necessarily see that same level of popularity outside of Thailand, though Jung Dunk is very popular everywhere for reasons that are pretty obvious. And I think another example is to think about how there are people who consume Thai BL outside of Thailand who will watch everything that they gain access to, right? Whereas in Thailand, that's certainly not the case. Like there's a lot more discernment, I think, in some Thai BL fans' consumer patterns, and that's partly due to questions of access as well. I think another series that's hugely popular in Thailand that maybe is getting overlooked internationally is Laws of Attraction, starring Jam Film.
Oh, I'm much.
And another one that I can think of off the top of my head, which I see people talking about, in Thailand, but not so much as I would have hoped, is I Feel You Linger in the Air. And that's purely because I Feel You Linger in the Air is very difficult to access outside of Thailand because of the ways that they've chosen to market it. So this is important. Like, the thing is, GMMTV reigns supreme because you can get it on YouTube, right? Though, of course, they've paywalled some of their stuff, and in certain markets, that's certainly not the case. GMMTV content is not easily available on YouTube for fans in Japan, for instance. They have to pay.
Oh, okay. That's so weird.
Yeah.
Let's move on to some other people that we can get to. One person I wanted to get... I was going to say one person I wanted to get into. This does not sound right. One person I wanted to elaborate on. I was curious about Stud from Friendzone. I know that he came out. Plusta, right? That's his name. Yeah. What happened there? Like, what's his narrative of?
He's been like openly out for years, years and years and years. Even when he was like not. I mean, he's a bit of a what I guess we could call a child star, though. You know, he was on a famous, well, not famous. He was on a teen variety show called Strawberry Cupcake in the early 2010s. And he was on that show with Bright for Chitterwit, actually. And then he transitioned across to GMMTV and was in a lot of their early series, You Prince, and also in... he was in that one with Nanon, where he played the bully. My Dear Loser is the one I'm looking for. And then played a variety of bit roles, and then eventually, Stud in Friendzone, where he played...
Was he out before
Friendzone? Yeah. So he was always like, this is the thing, like, some of these actors, he's out in the sense that he's out in his personal life and out on his social media. But did he make any grand declarations about his sexuality at any point in time in his professional career? No. And this is, I think, important to kind of understand and acknowledge about the Thai entertainment industry, is that there is a space for a subtlety of performance where you just don't address it, and then you allow it to kind of sit in the background, and it's okay. It's the act of speaking it out or actualizing it through some kind of an announcement that can then lead to those dinosaurs sitting around the director's table to decide, okay, you're a problem. Like there are a number of actors, both within the BL industry specifically, but also just within the entertainment industry in Thailand, that people know. They know that they're queer. For example, PPG from Love of Siam, the guy who played the love interest of Maria Mara, has never come out formally, but everyone knows that he's gay, right? And it's because there's particular ways of speaking, there's particular topics of conversation, there's particular places you go to, ways you comport your body that subtly indicate to people who understand within Thailand who you are and where you've come from. Okay? And if you can read that, it's very clear who is and who is not queer. This is true of male talents. When it comes to female queer talents, it's a little bit more tricky because heteropatriarchy comes into play here. Women in Thai media culture are expected to be a very, very particular way, right? Men have a lot more freedom by the virtue of being men, right? Whereas women, so women who choose to be, outwardly non-binary and genderqueer, and I'm thinking of Sylvie, for instance, the singer who sang a song together with Jeff Satur and then starred in The Warp Effect, who played basically a character who embodied her own kind of personal
And she's in Laws of Attraction.
And she is in Laws of Attraction, exactly right. Like so like that's someone who but this is someone who's come later to the game, right? So and they, you know, there's difficulties in doing that sort of thing, and that's dramatized even within the narrative of the warp effect, where, you know, the idea of casting a gender non-conforming, non-binary, queer individual in the classical role of what in Thailand is called Nai Ek, the female protagonist of a series, was like met with negative reactions from those who represented the powers that be within that series. And the series did an excellent job of dramatizing and exploring that, actually. That's a really good representation of what things are like. Likewise, you know, series like War of Why give you a good understanding of, in a somewhat overly dramatized and exaggerated way. I want to flag that. War of Why gives a good access to the problems that exist. Another one that I often recommend people to watch is Lovely Writer, where the final kind of rising action of the series is specifically about the problematics of having two out actors within the series. And what I particularly enjoyed about Lovely Writer is how the main male couple that was in the show that was being produced within the show were both presented as gay men, right? And so the problem wasn't necessarily about having LGBTQ actors within the series. The problem was that one gay man was choosing to date someone who wasn't the gay man that he was supposed to be dating within the context of that production logic. So these series actually provide really, really good opportunities to think about some of these broader tensions and why, you know, freelance actors such as Fluke Natach and Earth from Wabi Sabi, I can't remember his personal name, starts with K, I think. Like they've had, let's say, somewhat checkered careers because of those broader conservative forces in the backgrounds who, to be quite realistic, don't really know what to do with them because they're so stuck in a heteronormative understanding of how the Thai media industry works. What's very interesting is how fandom has progressed to a point beyond which the production companies themselves understand to operate, with a few notable exceptions, such as, for instance, Wabi Sabi or for GMMTV in some ways, but not fully. So it's really messy. This is the thing that I find interesting.
I can do that.
Yes, thank you. Someone finally mentioned one of our fantastic gâteau talents. So there's a question here. Do I leave it to you guys to ask?
Or? No, I mean, like, this is technology. I don't have to waste my vocal.
I just, I don't want to just dominate the conversation. So thank you. Kalami Crystal 27 has asked, what is the perception of performers like Jenny Panhan? And this is really, really key. And it's one of the things why when Edison and I were kind of chatting about what do we call this chat, I suggested openly LGBTQ+, because we needed the T, or more accurately, we needed the K for gâteau, because there is this subject position within Thai understandings of gender and sexuality known as the gâteau, which is always horribly translated in English as ladyboy, and is not necessarily fully equivalent to the English word trans, but for the ease of conversation today, I'm just going to treat them as somewhat similar, that have a long history in Thai media culture. Okay, trans individuals in the sense of gâteau, ladyboys, have had a position within Thai media culture since like the beginning of film and television in Thailand in the early decades of the 20th century. Okay, gâteau play a role within Thai media culture as either dangerous threats that need to be managed, or as comedic, playing clowns, basically. But this has allowed many gatoi individuals to then transition into the role of hosting. So if we think, for instance, about GMMTV, there are 3 notable gatoi individuals who play a role as hosting. Jenny Panhan, Pigoji, and Pigolf. Okay, and Pompam, also affectionately known as Kunyai, which means Kunya. Sorry, not Kunyai. I've been watching I Feel You Linger in the Air. Kunya, so grandmother. Pompam. These are all people who are gatoi, and they are very diverse in their transness, if we want to use that term. They exist within a particular space where they can act comedically, but also act as hosts. And for those who are familiar with Japanese media culture, you may be familiar with a similar phenomenon within Japanese variety shows where you have these cross-dressing men who are known as one kyara, which means older sister characters. And you know, their function is to be camp and also a bit sharp-tongued, and they're allowed to say things that men and women in Japanese society can't necessarily say due to their kind of comedic transgression. Characters like Jenny Panhan, individuals like Jenny Panhan and Pigoji, and to a lesser extent Pigolf, and definitely Pompam, you know, they play that function in Thai media culture. So there has been a wider acceptance of gatoi individuals as long as they sit within that very prescribed position for them within Thai media culture. And that's been around for decades. What we are beginning to see, however, in recent years is shifts that have allowed for broader positioning. And let's talk about Jenny Panhan, because Jenny in 3 Will Be Free was allowed to play not just a comedic role, but a hugely, hugely, hugely sophisticated and very well put together trans individual who, like, Jenny knocked it out of every scene she was in that particular series. But you'll notice how I'm using the discussion she, you know, I'm talking about she. And yes, there's been instances where we've seen some internalized or implicit transphobia directed at Jenny from talents in GMMTV. I'm not going to name names, but I'm sure everyone knows there's a very famous instance of this having happened before. And that still kind of demonstrates that we're still in this transitional moment. But to be quite honest, you know, Jenny in particular, but Pigoji as well, I love them both. And they're wildly popular in Thailand, and they're just accepted for who they are because of that space for them that exists. And that's why, you know, if you're watching Thai BL series, that's why you always have the gatoi characters in the series. As well as another kind of so the gatoi characters are people who are what we would consider, as I said, somewhat equivalent to trans. There are also, I guess, what we could call femme gay men. In Thai, they're often called tut, which is a term that has been reappropriated by these people. It used to be a slur, but and can still be used as a slur, but they use it to refer to themselves. And I always think back to watching Lovesick, the series, where they had the Angels Gang, which was a group of cisy gay men and like gatoi individuals, and they played a comedic role, but when push came to shove and like Pun and No's relationship needed to be protected, they came forward and protected them, right? And that was like the function, and that's why you'll still see these characters in Thai lakon to this day. They play comedic roles, but then they also play these important kind of supportive roles as well, and that's just a normal part of Thai media culture. And yeah, so Jenny Panhan, Pigoji, Pigolf, Kun Pompam, Yai, like they're well and truly established and accepted, and not in a way that I would say is as limiting as it used to be in the past, because as we can see with Jenny, she's getting a flourishing acting career. She's brilliant, love her.
Need more.
Yes, we need more. I'm so happy in OnlyFriends she's finally got her handsome boy toy.
There's who else is there? Who's the lead actor for Wake Up Ladies, and he's also a host. Is he?
Are you talking about Pom Pam?
How is that? Let me just Google it.
Yeah, that's Pom Pam.
Oh, I didn't know they're in there. Okay, all right. So he's also in that sort of category.
Yeah. No. I'm trying to remember. Wake Up Ladies. That was the one that also the series had first in, right?
I didn't watch the whole of it, but I've seen the screenshots. Yes.
Oh God! If anyone's listening in the chat and can remember that's where he played that really weird K-pop boy, right? First counterpart.
We have another question.
Yeah. Thank you, BDESI. So this is a question. Is there a formal, respectful way on how we address Katoe, like P Jenny and P Goji? I mean, using P is already respectful. Do Thais use specific pronouns too, like in the West? So pronouns in Thai language are gendered, and they are operate through politeness as well. One of the things that is important to note about the Thai language, however, is that you can use someone's name in instances where we in English would say you. So a good way, if you're concerned about getting around these kind of gendered conceptualizations, is to address them directly as P Jenny, P Goji, and you'll notice that a lot of the talent in GMM do utilize, like, directly just use P to refer to them, or just use the equivalent kun, meaning you, which is a polite word for you. Just for those of you who watch Thai BL and aren't aware of this, gu and mung, which are the terms that are often utilized by the boys to chat with each other, are exceptionally impolite in kind of public conversation. Like, it's a deliberate choice on behalf of GMMTV that has then flowed into other spaces, and it's not BL specific. It's part of just normal thing to kind of represent a certain form of kind of normative masculinity. I think most. I'm trying to think now. I think both Jenny and Pigoji and certainly Golf use shan to refer to themselves, which is the polite female version for I. And yeah, most people then respond to them with kun or pi jenny, pi goji. So that I hope that answers your question, Bidesi. So if you're looking for, is there a gender neutral kind of pronoun that can be used, Thai doesn't necessarily have the same problems we have with he, she. Yes, there are words meaning he and she. Cow meaning he, for instance. But you can get around them by using people's names.
I want to move on to other countries, but before we do, just touch on copter.
Yes,
copter. Non-binary. What were the circumstances of that? And
remember how I was talking to you about, people who very early on just played the game and were involved in the system, and then very later, when things shifted politically in Thailand, they found a space to finally publicly address their queerness. Copter is a great example of this because, of course, Copter, they were first, they first appeared in Two Moons, the series, back in 2016, with Kimon, and then kind of floated around, became part of a boy band, was not necessarily well managed by their agency Star Hunter, was cast in a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't necessarily the greatest it could be. I'm saying this because I loved Kim Cobb. I loved them, and I love them still, even though they're pretty much dead in like kind of production terms. But Copter finally, Copter often would speak to political issues and queer issues in their social media. And then finally, was it 2021? Can anyone remember? I think it's 2021. Finally came out as non-binary and addressed, these are my pronouns. I prefer they, them. I'm non-binary, identify as a member of the LGBTQ community, though has never really formally indicated what letter in the alphabet soup they identify with, but came out and did so because they were at a moment where they could. Back in 2016, no way, especially because Star Hunter had a reputation, is much more conservative than certain other of the talent agencies. That's partly because they were mostly in the business of selling musicians. So the idea is that, if you're like a pop idol, you need to be available to your female fans. So yeah, that's partly why that was the case. Though I think that Star Hunter has sensed the way the winds are blowing. If you look at the way that they are basically enabling Mossbank to date each other in public. That's a joke. Yeah. But yeah, so Copter came out and then, was very vocal in and kind of active in talking about, non-binary and what that means, and reflecting on ethical questions related to the BL industry in Thailand, and became quite a significant voice within those debates. And I have always really appreciated that. And Copter most significantly was able to also kind of transition into kind of speaking internationally as well. Was able to get their words into Teen Vogue twice. That's partly because of the work of a friend of mine, the journalist, but was very keen to get their words out there. And I think that that's really great. Copter is now, of course, freelance, has left Star Hunter, about time. And I'm not sure what they're currently doing with their life within that regard. But yeah, I think the other thing that's important to note about Copter is that, yeah, they're non-binary, but they do that in a very interesting way because, like, Copter's quite famous amongst their fans. They were a bit of a muscle pig and like gym junkie and so forth, and kind of put the lie to the idea in Thai society that to be non-binary meant to be femme. Right. And I think that was very significant as well. It's one of the things that I appreciated about them. Yeah. But how was it received by fandom? Very positively. How did mainstream society receive it? There was a little bit of buzz in the entertainment press, but not a lot.
Well, also the concept of the glass closet. How do we? Is that something we need to tiptoe around, or like is it?
I mean, yes, I think so. Yeah. I've already addressed, I think, the idea that if you know, you know. And there are a number of talent in Thailand that it's not subtle. Some of it is subtle. Sometimes the kind of the queerness that sits underneath the Thai BL industry amongst the actors is subtle. But then there are people who decide, I'm going to take a sledgehammer and smack you over the face with it. And I always have to be very careful here, as I have been on my social media account. Like, yes, I know some people, but I cannot identify them publicly, because that would be to out them. And that's not at all okay, because if they've chosen to be in the glass closet, this idea that they hint, nudge, nudge, but never officially say anything, there must be very, very important reasons why they do that. And I'm going to respect that always. So yeah, I don't know if I can name names. I know off camera, you and I, we three have spoken about a few people, but now that this is being formally recorded, I don't know if I can. Besides, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
But still, that representation in themselves, like,
yeah.
Let's go to some other countries. So Japan, the idol who I have no idea about, who came out. That's significant news. I don't mean that as shade. I just matter of fact.
No, it's okay.
But please address who this person is and why this news is significant.
So we're talking here about a former member of AAA, which was a co-ed idol group that was very, very active in the 2000s and early 2010s. His name is Atae Shinjiro. Shinjiro Atae in the Western name order. And I was telling DC and Anderson, I was a massive fan of him back in the day. Like, I had his posters in my room and everything. In contemporary Stan talk, he was my bias in that group. Anyway, he came out as gay, publicly came out on Instagram and at a fan meet very recently, about maybe 2 months ago now, I think. I can't remember
Time
exactly
is
when.
just a concept that doesn't work.
Yeah,
in
no,
my
I'm
brain.
pretty sure it was June. Someone may be able to correct me or point out what time it actually was. So it's hugely, hugely, hugely significant because Japan's idol culture is strongly heteronormative. Okay, like, not just in the sense of like idols aren't even supposed to date, right? So coming out and admitting that they are a sexual romantic being in and of itself is risky in Japan, and then indicating that their gendered and sexual being deviates from the shocking heteropatriarchy of Japanese media culture and society is a huge step. Now, this isn't to say that there aren't entertainers in Japan who have come out. I mentioned previously the kind of elder women characters, the comedians within variety culture. They're all out, and some of them have even been involved in like activist or kind of gay subcultural spaces or queer subcultural spaces, whatever you want to call it. And there's also important kind of academics and activists who and politicians in Japan who are out and proud, both men and women alike, as well as trans. But within the entertainment industry, Japan's entertainment industry is extraordinarily apolitical. It is very, 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 very firmly designed structurally not to engage with political questions. Okay, so Atae Shinjiro's decision to make the very, very difficult decision to come out, probably within what I would mention and have to highlight is probably the twilight of his career, is hugely significant because it sets up this idea that you can do this now. Now, I know we spoke previously about not mythologizing the first person, and Shinjiro Atae is not the first person. But what's significant, I think, about this moment is that it's aligning at a time within which the Japanese government failed to implement a proper systemic anti-discrimination law addressing LGBTQ people that was deliberately watered down by conservative elements of the ruling Liberal Democratic National Party, who were weaponizing the same sorts of anti-trans right-wing discussion points that we're seeing emerge within the United States. And that's very, 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 very scary within the context of Japan. We don't need that. But it's also at a time in which the vast majority of people in Japan, recent polling suggests at least 70% of people are in favor of same-sex marriage and are in favor of introducing laws to protect LGBTQ plus people. We are beginning to see the tides shifting with regards to attitudes towards LGBTQ people in Japan. Maybe not necessarily in the radical ways that me, the scholar, would like to see it, but certainly within contexts where, the dignity and respect afforded individuals is being recognized by the general public, by industry and business, and by local governments, most significantly. So Shinjiro Atae coming out is important, not necessarily because he's paving the way for other people to do so, but because it indicates that there has been a shift within Japanese society and Japanese media culture that facilitates an idol coming out. And, it's also a really significant moment because, once again, his narrative joins with several other prominent narratives by men and women who have chosen to come out in Japanese society to show the struggles of coming out. And like I'm always very careful in trying not to privilege the coming out process as the be all and end all of queer politics, because as we talked about with the glass closet, sometimes the closet is a safe space and it's a necessary space, particularly in societies where coming out would lead to your death. Why would you come out? It's not a politically clever thing to do. But within regards to this Japanese context, it does allow for people to reflect on and think about the structurings of gender and sexuality and the shockingly outdated understandings of these things that the contemporary government has, right? So Shinjiro Atai is part of a broader sea change in Japan, one could say, that I welcome very firmly. That will be, you know, as someone who has done research in Tokyo's largest gay nightlife district, where I would bump into people involved in the entertainment industry, idols, producers, stars of the kabuki theater, you know, all sorts of people who couldn't come out. Like it's really great to see someone come out. Now, it is important to acknowledge that Atai Shinjiro does spend most of his time living in America. He chose to come out in English and has mostly addressed English language newspapers, but has also, of course, addressed Japanese language newspapers. That's significant because that plays into a broader politics within which Japan tends to view this as a somewhat foreign issue. But I would say to you that it was probably a strategic move on his behalf to get visibility. Because there's this long tradition within Japan where LGBTQ issues, as well as issues in the entertainment industry, only get taken seriously in Japan when there is a view from the outside legitimizing it, most famously at the moment with regards to the sexual abuse allegations plaguing Japan's largest production company of male idols, Johnny's and Associates. So we also need to think about Atai Shinjiro's decision to reveal his sexuality within that broader media moment, within which there's broader scrutiny of the male idol industry for its abuses of power. And I think that it was very significant because it helps remind individuals in Japan that gay men active within the entertainment industry aren't just evil sexual predators who are, you know, molesting young boys. There's also positive stories. And I think that that's really, 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 really key right now within the Japanese moment. This is something I'm actually going to be talking to a journalist at a Japanese newspaper about tomorrow. So I've been thinking about it quite a lot lately.
Well,
but yes, it all boils down to like, yay, my bias is gay. I could have had a shot.
There's been a resurgence of BL idols, not BL idols, Japanese idols in BL, because we always see in the credits they're part of like EXO or something. I don't know them, but like I'm surprised there's no stigma anymore about, you know, playing BL roles. For this.
So this is we can thank Thai BL and the Thai BL boom of 2020 for this in Japan, and then we can thank some big name actors like Akaso Eiji and Machida Keita, and of course we cannot neglect, I was just talking about them in a slightly problematic sense, Johnny's and Associates deciding to put their two it boys, Meguro Ren and Michieda Shinsuke, into, what was the stupid English name? My Love Mix-Up. Kieta
Hatsuko.
Yeah.
But without even saying it was a BL.
Oh. Yeah, no. It's so the English official translation is My Love Mix-Up.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I hate it because it's like, it's not, because the Japanese title has a certain poeticism to it. But yeah, so like when basically like if Johnny's is willing to do it, yeah, they didn't kiss, but like Johnny's was willing to do it, then other companies are willing to do it, and then some companies are willing to take it even further. So Cho Tokyu, Bullet Train, I think is the English name of their band. You've got one member in Minato's Laundry, another one starred in Tokyo in April, or whatever it was called.
We're watching those. Were they?
So they were in that. Fantastics from Exile Tribe, having, of course, Yagi Yusei in My Beautiful Man, and Onodera, whatever his last name is. Is that right? No, that's not right. I've got it mixed up with another Johnny's boy. Candy Color Paradox. They were both idols. One from Milk, one from And this is something that we've spoken about previously, us three, in previous conversations I've had with you. Like, that the commercialization of BL is actually significant in that it opens up spaces, and that we can't always already assume money making is bad, because within the context of Japan, yes, it is allowing BL to exist beyond the pages of a manga. And this is the problem with BL within the Japanese context, is that for such a long time it's been tied to the world of what in Japan is called the 2D, and that has limited its potential to intervene in some ways in kind of broader questions of media politics, because it was always you could always kind of slot it away into the world of women's manga and then write it off as a subculture. So which is a problematic thing to do. I want to flag, like, that's not at all how BL is consumed and understood in Japan, but it was possible to do that because you didn't have real life people performing in it, or if you did, it was in really shoddy movies and series. So this is significant, though, of course, none of these men idols are, publicly coming out and doing anything. So who knows? Maybe Atai Shinjiro. Oh, I'd love to. Oh God, put him in a VL. I'm sorry, my brain just went off into a random tangent. But then you've got big name stars appearing in queer cinema in Japan, like Egoist, which is not formally marketed as BL, but was certainly popular amongst BL fans in Japan as well as internationally. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that it's great to see BL fans engaging with queer literature and queer cinema. That's a good thing, right? And that had Suzuki Ryuhei, hugely popular actor, play one of the roles, right? So it's good. It can only be a good thing. And like with regards to Egoist, you've seen Suzuki in particular, speaking quite candidly about their commitment and their allyship to LGBTQ plus rights. And I think that that's important. And we can celebrate that. But Japan, Thailand, like a lot of people will say, oh, Thailand's bad, no one's out, blah, 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 blah. And Thailand often gets thrown around amongst the Twitterati, if you will. I guess we can call them the Xerati now. About it's such a terrible, industry where no one's out. There's more out gay actors in Thai BL than there is in any other BL industry except for possibly the Philippines. And that should be acknowledged and celebrated, because BL in Japan certainly doesn't have any out gay male idol talents performing in it. And with South Korea, the only example where they've been a gay out and proud actor is with Holland, right? Appearing in Ocean Like Me. Unless there's someone others that people know about. But Holland, certainly. And of course, Holland's an indie idol. Sometimes you'll see people say, oh, the openly out K-pop idol, Holland. No, he's not a K-pop idol. He's an indie idol. He's underground because he wasn't allowed to debut, because he wanted to debut openly as a gay man and wanted to make that part of his idol persona. There are many, many, many gay and bisexual and trans and whatever, well, maybe not so much trans, lesbian idols in the K-pop industry. They're just not able to come out for the same reasons they're not able to come out in Japan. I can't share any details, but one of my friends once shared, an activist. So he's a gay male activist in South Korea, and told me, he told me the story of when he dated an idol, who was active in the industry, and had to keep it all under wraps. And look at how many boys are involved in those boy groups. Of course, some of them are the minute that there's 10 or plus members in a boy group, statistically, there has to be at least one gay man.
Oh my God. There's
20%
50 people in exile with generations and all the subgroups and stuff like that. So
Same with AKB. Look at how many girls there are. If there's not like sappy girls in AKB48, like, there has to be.
I need
It
to
is
be an
very-
activist in South Korea.
Very interesting.
DC, you had a follow-up? Did you have a question?
Yeah, which is very interesting with I was just speaking on the Exile and having some of the members inside of BL, but it's also very interesting because I'm also watching High Low right now, that whole series.
Which
but
one?
Then also,
There's so many.
I'm at like End of Sky right now, so I'm gonna eventually get through all of that.
Oh yeah.
But then also I remember one of the Exile guys was in he was in Alice in Borderlands, but then also he was in Cherry Magic. So it's like they because they're able to be there, but they're not devoted to being BL actors, but they're just like, oh, I can kind of do that. But also I wanted to say it's a little change finally, just it's not as big as Thailand, but we finally see in Japanese BL we are both grooms. He and I are grooms. Yeah. And then also with the Cherry Magic movie, they were actually, we're going to get married, and they had to bring it to, and it's I'm not saying, oh yeah, Japan's great because they had these two media things, but it's like it's slow. It is never going to be.
Things are changing. Things are changing.
Things are changing.
And one of my great frustrations is that a lot of I referred to the Twitterati, and I'm going to use that term again. A lot of the discourse you see online about BL in Japan is stuck in like, this is what it was like in the early 90s. We're not like, that's 30 something years ago, right? Like, so it's really evolved. DC, is your background Canberra? Wait.
DC wanted to.
Yes, I wanted to be just like everybody else.
Just like
everybody else.
Like completely off topic, but I'm like, wait, what is that?
Yes, I wanted to be. Yeah. I had another one up earlier, but
sorry, we were having a really important conversation. I just derailed it. I
mean, we could derail it like this, but
yeah. Oh, my babies.
But yeah. But go ahead. What did you say? I'm sorry for distracting.
It's all good. It's all good. So we were talking about things in Japan are changing. We're beginning to see some. The thing is that there has been a boom. In fact, we call it the LGBT boom that occurred in Japan 2012 through to about 2015. And then where there was a lot of interest in LGBTQ plus issues within mainstream media. And then after that, from 2016 up until the present day, that led to a broader kind of flourishing of a lot of media texts exploring LGBTQ plus issues in live action form rather than the traditional world of literary fiction or manga, whether that be kind of girls manga or gay men's manga, which bleed into each other more and more nowadays as well, I would flag. So it's shifting. And even within South Korea, it's shifting in the sense that we're beginning to see, for instance, characters who just identify as gay in series. And that like, I know that sounds like it's the bare minimum, but like, remember that for the longest time, the way that BL functioned was as, the spiritual connection between two individuals that transcended their gendered identity, which I want to flag has a political potential embedded within it, and that we can celebrate that as different to identitarian politics. But within the current, political climate, I think identitarian politics is important because identities are under attack. So within the context of South Korea, a shockingly homophobic society, as I'm sure many people know, don't need to rehearse that. Even having idols appearing in a BL series is pretty revolutionary. Like, for instance, thinking about the series that the members of Omega X were in, like two members from the same group. Yeah, they didn't kiss, much to my horror and disgust. But like just the very act of having two members within that series was a huge deal. But also seeing series like The Eighth Sense or Seeing My Crush, you know, with quite, you know, no longer pecking or staged kisses through camera angles and like, you know, seeing the tongues, like that's a huge deal in South Korea. I cannot stress that. Semantic Error, for instance, which had a proper kissing scene between a former idol and a current idol. Yeah, they were from groups that like, and I say this with love, were probably considered to be nougat groups, but that's like, that means unknown groups, like unpopular groups. That was like,
well, now they're known.
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, with Park Jae-chan especially, yeah, now they're known. Like, and that's significant and celebratable, right? Now, yes, we haven't quite reached the stage where the big four major companies, YG Entertainment, SM Entertainment, The Hybe, Monopoly, and JYP, we haven't seen their idols being cast into BL. I think that it's still a bit too early for that to happen. But maybe eventually it will, because this is the thing. It's beginning to make waves in South Korea as well.
What about
that being said, yeah, in the sense that it's all web series, because it would not get onto the TV in South Korea right now.
only one of?
Yes, yeah. Bump Up Business.
Are they quite popular or like?
Oh God, no. Sorry to any Lions who happen to be listening in. But no. Sadly, no.
But obviously the BL might help. And also, His Man.
Yes,
reality
and
dating
like
show.
so His Man, the variety, the dating variety show, which I'm gonna flag I've not watched because I am not a reality television person, so I'm not necessarily interested in dating shows and so forth. So I didn't watch it, but I was quite pleased to see the couple that came out of the second series getting a feature in Dazed magazine. Like that's a huge deal. I mean, yes, the fashion industry is one space in South Korea where gay men have been able to be quite open, and so we know Holland makes more money as a model than he ever has as an idol, sadly. And likewise, you know, you have very famous historical designers like Andre Kim, who was dressing presidents at one stage, even openly gay. By virtue of their, you know, positioning in an industry that is kind of queer coded, if you will. But yeah, His Man is good. For that person who asked that question about, you know, success of these series, you know, does international fandom play a role? I mean, His Man was produced by, what is it, Gaga Ulala or whatever, however you pronounce it. I've never actually known how you pronounce it. Right? I think it's Gaga Ulala. And this is like to the point where I've spoken to their CEO and I still don't know how it's pronounced. And it was funded through them, like, and it's an international production in many ways, and it was mostly popular with international consumers. It was watched in South Korea, but as a web series, but like it was internationally successful. But that's just part and parcel of the current moment within the broader Korean wave, where things are being produced with an eye to an international market, and that's what Thailand is currently doing too. So I think you know they're really interesting. As well as within South Korea, we have seen a variety of kind of YouTubers, gay couples, as well as just individual gay men, beginning to carve out spaces for themselves as what we call in academia micro celebrities. And we also see that in Japan as well. And some of them have been engaging with BL and BL fandom strategically to sell their product. But the thing is that they're gay men like engaging with BL content. And you know, most of these guys are like doing thirst traps and things. Young Jae in particular is the one that comes to mind. But yeah, like it's very interesting to see the ways in which BL is integrating into and responding to and becoming part and parcel of a broader kind of Asian queer consumer culture, I think. And this idea that it's somehow separate from, like, this is the thing, you know, a lot of people throw the word BL as a kind of, you know, fetishistic, cultural appropriative form. But then when a gay man who runs a live stream channel, who's clearly interested in becoming some kind of influencer celebrity, engages with BL strategically to get BL fans to watch his content, is that cultural appropriation? Right? Like, so this is a question, and I have no answer to it. Like, I guess what I want to point out is that it's the wrong question to be asking in both those instances. There's something more interesting going on here, in which women's consumer culture and gay male media spaces are beginning to merge and interact with each other and feed each other in ways that I think is really, really interesting. And that is facilitating this broader shift in Asia's media culture that allows more and more individuals to choose to openly reveal their queerness, whether through an explicit coming out or through the subtle play of language and performance that we've alluded to in the Thai context. And then you've got another example of this in the Philippines, where we saw the rise of Pinoy BL as part and parcel of the gay indie cinema scene in the Philippines, basically saying, hey, there's this buzzword, we can finally get our stuff out and viewed and consumed. And they were mostly drawing on talent who identified as members of the LGBTQ plus community. Now, Pinoy BL is not particularly popular in the Philippines. It has its devotees, but that's due to issues of structure and just the fact that the Filipino media market is just very, very, very messy. Pinoy BL has not necessarily raised to have the same sorts of impact as other kind of BL context we've been talking about. This isn't to lessen its political import, because it's really significant. And some, of course, series did indeed manage to achieve that sort of international mainstream success. Game Boys being the classic example, Gaya sa Pelikula being another one. But there's a lot of Pinoy BL that's being produced that doesn't go anywhere, sadly. And it's not just a question of quality. I think that it's important to note that a lot of people kind of throw around the idea that it's poor quality, ergo it doesn't get picked up. I think that that's unfair. I think that it's more important to recognize the structural limitations of the Philippine media industry, which is very sad, because the one thing that Philippine media industry has that many of these other industries don't have is the power of English language to cross borders. But there are other structural problems, including a lack of funding available for artistic endeavors in the Philippines more broadly, due to the government being useless and corrupt.
I mean, there was tons of, like, people watched Xena and Hercules, and that was like low production for the time. It's just like people are like, oh, this is not as well produced as, no, if you just have access sometimes.
If you can get it syndicated and sold overseas, people will watch it.
Right.
Yeah. So the problem is that, like, for some reason, the Pinoy BL stuff doesn't necessarily resonate particularly well online. And the problem, this may be, I don't want to say that, once again, it's a quality issue, but, like, we are in a system of overproduction. There's just so much being produced right now that, you know, I remember back when this stuff was like BL live action. I'm talking about BL manga and comics cultures, and, you know, that's been around, and there's always been heaps of that stuff available, especially if you have the language skills that I fortunately do have with Japanese. But, like, there's so much stuff now. But back when, like, 2014, 2015, like, we had like 2 series and we all watched it and we loved it because that was all we had, right? Whereas now, like, there's a GMM BL series that I am not watching, and that's the first time that's ever happened to me in a long time. Right now, I'm not going to say which one it is. You should be able to work it out if you read between the lines.
Dangerous something.
Yeah.
Some sort of danger.
It, like, I remember when my Thai friend first was like, well, watch Waterboy. Like that was one of my first BLs, and I watched it back in the day, and I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. Like people are like, look at me now, they're like, Waterboy, yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, so for me, like people are like, how are you so obsessed with Lovesick? I'm like, we didn't know White Noah was trash. No.
Girl,
But yeah.
what about Lovesick too?
Oh, now that to me is like I have mixed feelings. Like I want to see the series done well. It's not a company that I would have liked to have seen it done though. But at the same time, I'm kind of like,
Oh, I was talking about the sequel, but they're also doing a remake.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I thought. Yeah, no, I didn't realize you were talking about the remake. Yeah, I just assumed you meant the remake. But yeah, there was Lovesick 2. What was interesting, I mean, I've written about this in my scholarship. Lovesick 2 is quite interesting because they took it further than what Lovesick 1 did, which I thought was quite interesting. But this is the dawn of Thai BL culture. But yeah, no, you're right, DC. I have that the people are like that with me too. It's like, why did you like this? Or more importantly, I'll watch something from back in the day, and I'm kind of like, huh. Like the one series I don't have that problem with is Sotus, even though I find it a bit slow nowadays.
Mm.
Do we want to touch upon Taiwan? Is there anything there that's...
I don't know Taiwan as well, I'm going to be honest. So there's not much that I can say specifically, unless there's anything you guys can think of, or if there's any questions in the chat. The only thing I've been thinking about lately in Taiwan is the former member of the boy group Feilun Hai or Fahrenheit, Aaron Yan, who was outed by the press because he had 3 boyfriends a few years ago, and now is involved in the current Me Too allegations sweeping Taiwan, that he apparently, well, I guess the word that we could use is raped a young boy who was looking to break into the industry. So that's the only thing I can really add to this conversation.
Who was he?
And that's
What
an
was
example.
he?
That's an example of an idol who's openly queer and then is not a good role model.
Oh, is he an idol, but he's not an actor?
He acts as well, yeah, but not in BL, just standard actor. Tanya Lun, Aaron Tan.
Yeah, it's like, we want representation, not that.
No, not like that. Yes, yeah. I mean, and to be fair, exactly. I mean, no, he's it's interesting because, like, I was talking about, like, I had Atai Shinjiro posters near my bed. I also had Aaron Yan posters near my bed, and like now we've got they're both now out openly gay, and yet one's trash and one's not. Or at least one's, I hope one's not. But like, I'm just thinking about like me, very young me, being like, who would have been like, yay! But now I'm, we don't need him. Aaron Yan can go into the trash where he belongs.
Surprising there's not more out people, because Taiwan has a bit more of a progressive culture, I assume.
Taiwan has a veneer of progressiveness.
Oh.
It's very cleverly marketed as such. Yes, they have anti-discrimination law, and they're the only Asian nation that currently has legally recognized same-sex marriage.
I thought there was like a few more now, like Nepal.
Does Nepal have? Oh wait, no, I think so. Let me check. Asian same.
Well, I mean, especially, Bob, I think back here in the U.S., just because you have laws on the books doesn't mean that people like it's applied to people, or it just,
I think there's like oh yes, yeah, Nepal is very new. I didn't know that. That was like a month ago. That's why I didn't know. Okay, that's great. Yay! Thank you, Nepal. But yes, so just because it's on the book, I think it's important to recognize that it was a very difficult process to get that introduced as legislation in Taiwan. But the upcoming Taiwanese presidential election, I think we're possibly going to see Taiwan flip governments. So we'll see what happens. Yeah,
in terms
but we
of
won't
Taiwan,
go into that. Yeah, Taiwan's quite interesting. As I said, they do a lot of excellent work. Like actually, so Taiwan uses its same-sex marriage laws and its kind of large pride parade as part of its soft power, to present itself in a particular way. And I've always been somewhat like, I know friends from Taiwan who would most certainly say that it's not easy to be a gay man or a lesbian woman in Taiwan, especially to be a lesbian woman in Taiwan. Because, yeah, you can get married and, yes, there's laws around it, but what if your parents adhere to Confucianist understandings of the world, which many of them do? Right? What if you're poor? Right? Like, these sorts of questions. Like, these are issues in Taiwan to this day. What if you're a member of an indigenous tribe in Taiwan that's systemically been repressed due to Han nationalism? Like, yeah. So, not to dunk on Taiwan, but I think it's important to kind of put these on the table. And DC, you're quite right. America is a classic example of, like, yes, law says this, but society's, the law criminalizes people going and shooting people for putting up pride flags outside their shop, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I mean, how? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I was just saying for Taiwan, I think there's also a glass closet situation, because I was watching a BL with a friend who knows more about Taiwan celebrities, and they were like, that person is well known to be queer but hasn't come out situation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would say that Aaron my former beloved Aaron Yan, who I now hate, was one of these people.
Oh, okay. And then I think for Craving You, I followed an Instagram influencer who was featured in that show who is openly gay.
And wasn't there the actor? I can't remember, because, like, as I said, I'm not a big follower of the Taiwanese stuff. One of the actors who appeared in one of the history series, one of the early ones, ended up marrying their Japanese partner or something.
Oh,
yeah, which is nice.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That sounds like something I remember seeing somewhere. But yes, yeah. And then we don't even need to think about.
I'm not sure what this question is.
There's no such thing as BL actors in the West.
Do you mean like queer out actors and queer roles?
Color Me Crystal 27, thanks for the question, but can you clarify what you mean? BL is an Asian form of media culture.
Is Heartstopper wouldn't be classified BL in your eyes?
It sold as BL in bookstores in Japan and Thailand. Much to probably, I'm sure that would cause Alice Osmond to have conniptions. Yeah. BL. I firmly need to put this on record. BL is an Asian form, a pan-Asian form of queer media. Texts such as Heartstopper, Red, White, Royal Blue, like things that have some kind of Love, Simon, and so forth, that have been kind of influenced by BL in some ways. Like Heartstopper clearly has been, despite the vehement protestations of their author. I don't like Heartstopper, guys. I'm just going to be out there and be quite blunt about it. No, they're not BL. That's just what I'm saying. So these aren't BL. BL exists as a particular media production and genre logic within the context of Asia. Western media has its own histories, and these texts emerge from those particular histories, even if they have been influenced by BL. That's really very significant to draw a line between them. Even if they're consumed as BL within Asia, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are BL. I think that's kind of an important point to make. And yes, there are broader questions. I mean, when it comes to Heartstopper, the whole Kit Connor thing, which I spoke about at length in basically every single conversation I think I've had with you guys, where he was outed by his like angry fans who were desperate for quote unquote authenticity politics, and then was forced to come out as bisexual well and truly before he was ready to do so, reveals the very, very dangerous potentials of a purity politics and an authenticity politics that demands particular forms of performance that are very rigid and tied to identitarian politics. There is no place for the glass closet for these people, and that's a bad thing, not a good thing. That's what I've spoken about it at length, so I'm not going to rehearse my comments here.
But do you have any opinions on the impact or the emergence of these shows in the West? Because we used to have more like...
I think it's good to see stories that are happy.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the things that's interesting is that BL has resonated with Western consumers for very many years because of its happiness. That you know, the Western queer media, particularly gay male media, has for the longest time in the West, due to the quite rightful history of its emergence from the AIDS epidemic, has engaged with what many call the politics of failure, or the politics of pessimism, and that's partly a result of a particular media moment that we call new queer cinema that emerged to make sense of the loss and devastation brought about by the AIDS epidemic within and how the media culture of the 1990s responded to that. And then, of course, there's always been a space for queer representation within the comedic media of North America and Western Europe, which is, of course, why we saw the rise of shows such as the Ellen DeGeneres sitcom or Will and Grace, more famously. But yes, up until now, queer narratives in the West had to be negative in some way, shape, or form, or had to deal with the difficulties, because that was the dominant media frame through which that was explored. And now we're seeing texts predominantly emerging from young adult literature contexts, or through graphic novels, or things that have clearly been influenced by the interactions between BL and slash and queer media culture, that are perhaps engaging with this in more optimistic or utopian ways. So this is, I think, significant. But I think, as I said, it's part of a broader shift within global queer media production more broadly, I think. And as I said, I think it's also partly born out of the engagement between these two spheres of media production. And it's not just like take, give. It's mutually kind of informing each other. So I think that's maybe all I can say on this. I'm not. I think I need to really remind people I am not a theorist of Western media, so I can't speak to it as well as I can speak to the work on Asia that I do.
I would say while the AIDS epidemic was very pivotal in changing the way in which gay media in and of itself, I think it really got back to the Hays Code of 1920s and how that was represented and things like that. And one of the great films that I would suggest that looks at queer represented media in the West, especially in the U.S. context, is The Celluloid Closet, in which they even talk about how if they were queer, I'm gonna use this way word, people were queer. The imaginary people were queer coded, and they usually have to, okay, you understand that they were a lesbian or they were gay, and they died in the end, and they weren't happy, and that was the way in which this queer identity was represented, that if you were this way, you had something bad happen to you. Everything from oh my God, what is that James Dean movie? There's one James Dean movie where the sidekick was gay for James Dean, but he ended up dying, and all of this kind of stuff. You even had in the 80s, in which they even say that Nightmare on Elm Street, I think it was the sequel or the first one, was a metaphor for the character's gayness. And you had to like sneak it in all kind of like that way. But then,
Oh, it's like the queer-coded Disney villains of the early 90s. So Ursula and Scar, right? Like,
yes,
yeah.
Like pretty much everyone who was
Well, most of them, Jafar as well, actually. But
Hades.
I mean, yeah. But Ursula in particular. I mean, Ursula is divine. For those of
yes,
you who don't know, who very, very influential, important kind of queer. I don't want to call her a drag queen because that's not quite right, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
yeah. No, Divine was amazing with whatchamacallit, I forgot his name. He's still around too.
I mean,
I
you also
do like.
yeah.
I do
Oh,
like the
sorry.
reactionary like narrative tales of what's happened after bury your gays tropes, because like it doesn't happen in BL, but like in shows that feature queer characters that I've watched before, like the 100, and even like The Boys. You start to kind of develop a sense that okay, our queer characters are safe because nobody wants the controversy of killing off their queer characters anymore. That's what I feel. I feel because the modern shows that I watch now, the queer characters don't get killed off because they don't want that backlash of we did the bury your gays again, which I find good. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's interesting because as DC was highlighting with regards to the Hays Code, which still, despite its formal abolition, plays a huge role in structuring the media of North America. The idea, for instance, that good characters must be rewarded and bad characters must be punished. Like this is like absolutely essential to the Hays Code. Hays Code. That like, you know, if you were evil or socially different, you needed to be punished for it. And that people who live good, moral, correct lives will be rewarded for that. And if for those of you who are familiar with, like, you know, the golden age of classic Hollywood, think about like really saccharine Christmas flicks like Miracle on, what is it?
34th
34th
Street.
Street. Yeah, and it's a Beautiful Life. Like, you know, like those are really, really, really clear, obvious examples of this, where people who align with heteropatriarchal social structures and particular capitalist inflected life courses are rewarded materially for it, right? And we still live like I like this is why Marvel films are still a thing, because it is like the logics of the Hays Code. I mean, God, they may as well still get, like, you know, Chris Hemsworth out in his Thor get up to tell us not to do drugs. Like, it's not subtle, right? So one of the things that I like about BL from Asia is that it isn't necessarily burdened by some of this.
And I just want to say that, yeah, they influence each other because in Theory of Love, a lot of the Theory of Love was actually taken from a lot of the teen movie flicks and Love Actually, and they
rom-coms.
Yeah. So it was like, yeah, they influence each other, and nothing operates in a vacuum.
Well, it's like Only Friends. We can celebrate Only Friends as being a radical queer BL text at the same time as clearly recognizing its indebtedness to a particular kind of North American queer televisual culture, queer as folk. I mean, Jojo Chichikon is extraordinarily explicit in saying that that's one of the touchstones, right? But that doesn't delegitimate it as a BL. It just reveals the fact that these two media cultures, whilst they have their own significant production histories, and that's why it's important to separate the two in the terms of nomenclature. Sorry, there's a good academic term. We can recognize their engagement with each other.
So just wanting to finish off this chat soon, but
yes,
maybe we could finish around this. I guess because I put this up because we were talking about JoJo as a queer creator, and then getting all this influence also from other queer sources, Chris Folk, and also like the Lens Talk, like reality TV sort of
Yeah.
segmentations in that show. I don't know how.
Yes, I was actually very shocked by that. I thought that was quite an interesting, what I would call writerly decision within that series. It wasn't. I didn't expect it, but I think it works. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
But yeah, like the role of queer creators, obviously they're pioneering more queer authenticity in BL representation.
I don't like that word authenticity, but yes.
You just meant like, okay, I don't know what I mean, but you should know what I mean. But
I don't know what I mean.
To respond to that question, I think it's. I mean, within the bounds of what I feel that comfortable saying. Yes, having queer creators, writers, directorial staff, but also technical staff, makeup artists, what have you, and also just in management at GMMTV, artist management in particular, is important because it does create a safe space, right? And there is a kind of nurturing of those who are not just within the question frame this in terms of the glass closet, but I think that it's also true of those who are in the closet, right? Who are keeping their sexuality under wraps. That there is, like we were talking about Wabi Sabi at the beginning of this conversation. I think that we can possibly cycle back to that in the sense that New, the creator, director, auteur, who was influential to setting up Wabi Sabi, like he views it as a space where people who are LGBTQ plus can be free to be LGBTQ plus, if you will, want to frame it. That was a clumsy way of framing it, but you know what I mean. And that they don't necessarily need to be out like Earth is, but it's a safe environment for anyone who wants to be that way. And GMM TV, despite what people seem to think on social media, is another such company. Okay, it's a safe space for LGBTQ plus people to work in some respects, in the sense of their the kind of security of their sexuality. Is it a safe place to work in the sense that they get enough time to rest? Are they protected from their fans? Are they overworked? Are they paid properly? Jury's still out. And I think the jury would be very hard. It would be very hard to convince that jury that the company's doing a good job. But one thing that they are doing well, at least, is this sort of protection. But I would flag that within the context where they haven't had to be tested, right? So no artist has chosen to come out yet. And we don't know what those old scary dinosaurs who sit around the director's table, we have no idea what they're saying. We have no idea what they can do, is the other thing. So I think that that's important to note. One thing that I will say here, I can't name anyone, but there are closeted queer people at GMMTV who've come to work at GMMTV because of the fact that they know that they can work within the BL industry because they're gay men or queer women or whatever, and they know that it's a safe place to work. I'm not naming names, but those people exist, right? And where it's very different from back in 2017 when the cast of LB Love by Chance was being scouted, and they very firmly said no LGBTQ plus people. We're not at that moment in time anymore. Not at all.
Just to finish off, I met maybe like a few months ago somebody from Thailand who said he was like friends with Jojo and Jenny and stuff. But also like he was saying how he doesn't watch BL because it doesn't speak to his experiences as a queer man in Thailand. Do you see a trend in that increasing with the demographic of people who watch? Because I remember you have studied.
Recent surveys conducted by a friend of mine. His name's Pia at Kyoto Sangyo University. He's Thai, but he works in Japan. He did a large survey of Thai BL fans and encountered that at least 1 in 5 identified as a gay man. So it's still a minority, but they exist. And I think that it's important to kind of recognize that for some gay men it doesn't resonate, but for others it does, and that it's I think dangerous to try and say that there is a particular normative viewing, because we just don't know, and it could also be generational as well as the other thing. Like we're talking about now a media moment within which BL in Thailand is mainstream culture. Like this is not something that sits at the side; it's mainstream culture. So God only knows what the younger Gen Z queers and the so-called Generation Alpha kids are gonna come up thinking, right? I think that that's important. So yeah, like I've encountered some Gen Z and millennial gays in Thailand who think that way, but I wonder if it's generational rather than based in their sexuality. But I think the other thing is that media can resonate with whoever, whenever, however, but it can also not resonate, and that's fine. Yeah. I mean, there's BL series that I watch. I'm like, yeah, right. You know what I mean? And like, I'm seeing a lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, like Only Friends really speaks to my experience." I can say that it doesn't speak to mine, right? No, as a gay man, no, not at all. But that's okay.
I have an older Thai friend who's gay, and he was like, he's the one who told me about Waterboy, but then also he told me about 1,000 Stars. And so he was like, everybody in his friend group was watching in Thailand was watching 1,000 Stars. And so
I think it's we really just need to abandon attempts, I think, to suggest that gay men in Thailand don't. I rejected a journal article for making this argument recently. Like I'm that passionate about it because they couldn't empirically back it up.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, like, it's interesting how the majority of audiences are women, but then we're bringing more queer directors to kind of tell more queer-centric stories instead of BL in its traditional form, which is a fantasy, right? So
that's a conversation for another day, Edison.
I thought I learned something today. But obviously, like DC's not to put any blame on DC, but we're also like, how do things get into buttholes so easily? Do you know what I mean? Like that's an authentic queer thing that.
Why did I have to be involved with how to get things to buttholes?
There's situations like that where you're kind of like, this is a fantasy, like that somebody could.
I'd point out that there's also problematic depictions of the mechanics of sex within heterosexual
right.
Oh, okay. All right. Sure. Okay, never mind. I guess it goes both ways.
But yeah, that just goes into how sex is produced in media writ large, because also you'll hear straight women saying that there's an orgasm gap, and that's from how sex is represented in the media that their partners watch, and that's just problematic all throughout. But it's also fantasy. Like if you just go into like, okay, this is how we're going to do it, and your 45-minute episode is now like 2.5 hours because you have to do preparation and all this other kind of stuff. So
I mean, I put it to you, and this is the thing that I always say when I hear this kind of comment. Like, I've never really watched a gay media program that has shown someone douching. Like if we're going to talk about the authenticity of sex. Now, I will say that, sometimes I'm reading like a K-pop fan fiction and they're like talking about like, oh, we need to treat them so gently. I'm kind of like, but like I get that, like, like that to me is not like because some straight girl is writing it and they don't know how sex works. It's more like that's become part and parcel of the ways in which this is represented, and the kind of obsessive care that is given to preparation within fan fiction culture is because it's emerged as a narrative trope within fan fiction as a way to demonstrate care and love and intimacy, rather than these people don't know how to have sex. So I think that that's important to remember as well.
I mean, I'm still learning. I need all the help. Okay. Thanks everyone for watching our live.
with that kind of discussion of sex, if anyone wants to learn more about the mechanics of sex, I guess just contact Edison.
Not me. I hope that was a educational topic. You can always follow Thomas on Twitter to ask any follow-up questions or whatever. But yeah, thanks for joining our live. I hope
Thank you for having me, guys. As
we learned more
always.
than I did. So yeah, I just got to finish it off somehow. Thanks, Thomas, for joining us. That
Bye.
was great. Okay, bye everyone.
See you later.
And broadcast.